Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and welcome to the Great League Fantasy Cup. This is a 1500 CP format where only Dragon, Fairy, and Steel-type Pokemon are allowed. And in this format, FLYGON emerges as one of the best possible Pokemon. Due to its Dragon and Ground coverage, it can hit both Steels and Dragons, and it also has play against the popular Fairy types, like being able to beat Play-Rough Azumarill in the 2-Shield. I tested it out in some Great League Fantasy Practice Cup battles, and this thing is absolutely disgusting with Scorching Sands. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's check out FLYGON in the Great League Fantasy Cup. Hopping into the first match, picking up a fairly neutral lead, Registeel versus Galarian Stunfisk. Registeel is able to slightly outpace to the first charge move here. Focus Blast not going to be enough to pick up a knockout, but the opponent is going to protect that Stunfisk with a shield. I know that I can survive an Earthquake, so I am going to no shield here. Opponent is able to connect with the Earthquake. I continue to farm up with the Registeel. Opponent fires off their energy here, but they are short of an Earthquake. This is just going to be the rock side, and my Registeel has okay IVs, so I am able to survive that damage, fire off with the Focus Blast, and now I aggressively switch into the FLYGON. Opponent is going to bank a bunch of energy and send in Azumarill, and this is one of the situations that I was talking about here. FLYGON with shields can do surprisingly well going up against Azumarill. In this case, I am lucky enough to get the Scorching Sands attack drop on the very first try, but even without debuffs, FLYGON is able to win the 2s. As you can see, the Scorching Sands, even from a regular non-Shadow FLYGON, do a massive amount of damage. Opponent goes for the Play Rough, I'm going to commit the shield, and again just continue to massively overfarm. Energy management on a Pokemon like FLYGON is extremely important. Opponent is going to be firing off their energy here. The switch clock is up, so I have to watch for a switch. In comes the Stunfisk, and I get the catch onto the low HP Reggie, and it's the Earthquake. That's massive. Now I can just farm down with the FLYGON. And there's not a lot of Pokemon in this format that want to deal with this energy. We'll have to see what the opponent does have in the back. It looks like a Mawile. No, it's actually a Klefki. A very cool pick from the opponent, but Scorching Sands does so much damage. We're able to get the full farm down of the Klefki and leave with a Scorching Sands loaded to KO the Azumarill. As you can see there, FLYGON with energy is just an absolute menace in the cup, and we're able to take that game. Picking up a great lead in the next match, Registeel into Azumarill. Opponent save switches into Turtonator, and unfortunately I was a little slow on the switch. With a faster switch, I could have made it to a Scorching Sands here, but unfortunately I'm only able to make it to a Dragon Claw, and a Dragon Claw will not be enough to KO. FLYGON is quite glassy, so I am going to be shielding up the Dragon Pulse here. Dragon Pulse isn't the greatest move ever, but FLYGON, even with the fact that I have a very high rank, does not tank hits very well. My opponent is just going to take their shield advantage, and they're probably going to be sending back in the Azumarill. But the nice thing is, I should be able to land a Scorching Sands, which should be able to put it into Zap Cannon range for later in the game, since Azumarill does not get knocked out by one move from Registeel. I continue to farm up with the FLYGON. Opponent is going to fire off their energy here. Opponent goes for the Ice Beam, and FLYGON gets KO'd. In the back, it's their own Reggie, and this is honestly not amazing for me. I'm going to fire off the Focus Blast and then look to try and catch a Focus Blast onto my Weezing. So I farm up, switch into the Weezing, and I get the catch. Did they go for the Focus Blast? No, they went for the Zap Cannon. That's extremely unfortunate. Thankfully, I don't get debuffed, but still, that is really, really tough. I timed the catch, I get it, but unfortunately, they were going for the debuff. The Overheat will be shielded, so I'm able to grab the opponent's final shield. I'm going to let this through. Opponent will go for the Focus Blast. Focus Blast is going to give them a small amount of energy, and now it's Registeel versus Registeel in the endgame. I overfarm to watch for the catch, and they get it anyway. Beautiful play by my opponent, as now, unfortunately, I'm going to need a second charge attack to KO the Azu. I continue to farm up, Azu, firing off energy. I'm going to let this through. Opponent is not running Hydro Pump, so I have a chance. I'm going to go for an undercharged Focus Blast here and try and commit to a lock-on farm down. It looks to be a pretty good undercharge. Registeel looking for the farm down, and the Azumarill survives on 1 HP and makes the last second charge move. They go for the Ice Beam there. Even if it was the Play Rough, I would be able to hang on, and now we have the battle of Registeel once again. I fire off the Focus Blast. That does massive damage, and it looks like I do have a tiny health advantage, so I will be able to take this game. Opponent goes for the Zap Cannon, recognizing that it is over, and I do get the farm down. Picking up a very positive lead in the next match, Registeel into Empoleon. Honestly, in the 2-shield, Empoleon can make this extremely close due to the fact that Empoleon does have very nice fast move pressure in this matchup. I'm going to be shielding, look to throw 2 lock-ons in the Zap Cannon here, but unfortunately I do get a small frame drop there, forces a throw on alignment, and my opponent gets an entire fast move for free. They're going to bank energy, send in the Wheezing. Due to my energy advantage, I'm able to outpace and fire off the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon will connect. I do get the debuff. I'm going to bank a little bit of energy and send in my own Wheezing. As this way, I know that I can tank any one move here. My opponent does go for the Overheat. That does quite a lot of damage, and I'm going to go for the Brutal Swing. This is resisted, but my opponent has taken a lot of damage already on their Wheezing, and I'm able to pick up a knockout. In the back, it's Tapu Fini, and Tapu Fini is quite difficult for Wheezing to deal with. The team is structured where hopefully FLYGON can bait out the potential fairy type, like something like an Azumarill, which it does have the potential to flip, and set up Wheezing to sweep. I fire off the Overheat. For being resisted, Wheezing put in a ton of work there. I'm going to send in the Registeel because I know Registeel can tank a move, and I'm going to have to rely on FLYGON to try and close in the endgame. Opponent goes for the Surf. I continue to farm up. I make it to the Focus Blast, and if they want this energy, they're going to have to shield. The Focus Blast does get shielded. Aggressive switch into the FLYGON. Opponent does have enough for a Moonblast here. I'm going to shield it. It is the Moonblast. Back in comes the Empoleon, and Empoleon is able to make it to a Hydro Cannon. Can FLYGON hang on here? The Hydro Cannon does massive damage. FLYGON able to withstand the damage and make it to Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands will pick up the knockout. There's still the low health Fini. Fini gets the farm down. It's a race of fast moves, and Registeel on low HP takes the win. We see a tough lead in the next match, Registeel versus Lucario. This time I'm actually going to save switch into the Wheezing because I do need to ensure that the Lucario is going to switch out. If I send in the FLYGON, the opponent can choose to stay in, go for power-up punches, and the neutral counters, especially when boosted, will shred through FLYGON. Whereas this way I can guarantee they're going to switch out, and then I can look to try and get shields down. Lucario, of course, a very scary Pokemon to deal with, but much less scary if I either get switch advantage or get shields. I'm able to grab the first shield from the opponent. I'm firing off another Brutal Swing. Opponent is going to let that through. Opponent tries to go for the farm down, but Galarian Wheezing managing to flip switch. Oh my goodness. In the back, they have a Charmer, so flipping switch advantage was absolutely everything. They send back in the Lucario, and I'm sending in the FLYGON. I do need to respect a potential nuke here. Opponent is going to full send the Shadow Ball. I'm doing so much damage with Mudshot that honestly I feel okay going for a Dragon Claw. Even if they call this, it will still do okay damage. They do call it, which is a pretty nice play by my opponent, but I'm going to go for another Dragon Claw. This will force the final shield if they want to keep the Lucario healthy. And Lucario, well, healthy is probably a strong word here. Keep it alive, basically. It is very low health. Registeel is going to get that farm down. Back in comes the Ninetales. I'm able to make it to a Zap Cannon. One Zap Cannon will not knock out, but my opponent just doesn't have the damage output from a Fairy type here to be able to take the win. I get the attack drop, but either way, the game is over with or without it. Opponent will go for the Psyshock there, and I'm able to make it to the Focus Blast. So despite a pretty rough lead and a bit of an interesting counter switch there, we're still able to flip switch advantage and take the game. We've got mirror leads in the next match, Registeel versus Registeel. This is probably going to be a common occurrence in this cup, as the Registeel Azumarill core, as I mentioned at the start, looks basically unbreakable. One of the only Pokemon that does have play into both is going to be the FLYGON. I'm able to grab an early shield with a Focus Blast, and I'm going to be shielding back as my opponent goes for the Zap Cannon, and they do get the debuff. That is a bit unfortunate for me. I'm farming up, and I'm going for the Focus Blast. This is going to be doing less damage than it typically would, and I may try and look for a catch. I farm up, trying for the catch, but the opponent shows great patience. My prediction was not accurate as to when they'd throw. They go for the Zap Cannon, and now my opponent sends in a Piloswine. Oh my goodness, I am so happy I did not save switch with FLYGON here, as FLYGON would get absolutely cooked. Speaking of getting cooked, they do not respect the overheat. Piloswine gets one shot, and in the back is Azumarill. Azumarill definitely the safer counter switch here for my opponent, as typically if you're going up against a standard Galarian Weezing moveset, the energy is completely walled, but they send in the Piloswine, and by doing so, they give me a chance. By landing the overheat, they're now a lot closer to Zap Cannon range on the Azumarill, which is very nice. This Azumarill is going to go for the Play Rough. If you are running Azu in this cup, I think Hydro Pump, just to have slightly better play into Ready Steel, is probably going to be the way to go. The Zap Cannon will be shielded. I do not get a debuff, which is a bit unfortunate. I'm going to no shield since they have not revealed Hydro Pump yet, and it is just going to be another Play Rough. I continue to farm. Opponent sends in the Registeel, and at this point, this game is won. FLYGON, since I'm running the non-shadow, can actually survive a Focus Blast here. It still does a ton of damage. As I mentioned, FLYGON is very, very glassy, but the damage output it has is absolutely unreal. I'm firing off the Scorching Sands. Scorching Sands is going to do very nice damage to the Azumarill, and FLYGON able to make it to Scorching Sands number 2. We don't even need the move on Registeel. FLYGON, it's glassy, but man, this thing can take over games. My goodness. Tough lead in the next match, Registeel versus a Scavalier. I'm going to save switch into FLYGON, farm up to the Scorching Sands, and I decide to go for a bait. A Scavalier is extremely glassy, so they are fairly likely to shield, and the opponent does just that. If this is an Acid Spray, I'm definitely not going to be happy, but thankfully they are not running Acid Spray, and since I baited once, I should just be able to win this matchup by going for double Scorching Sands. The Scorching Sands does get shielded, opponent continues to farm, they try for the farm down, but the pacing of FLYGON now that it has Scorching Sands is absolutely unreal, and I win switch advantage and shield advantage. They send in Berserker. Berserker, of course, can have access to a potential Iron Head, or close combat, or foul play. I bank energy, I try and catch an Iron Head onto my Regi, but it ends up being a simultaneous switch. Registeel into Registeel, so the opponent opting to run triple Steel. Zap Cannon will connect, it does get the debuff, and I'm going to be firing off the Focus Blast. Focus Blast will connect, that does a significant amount of damage to my opponent's Regi. I continue to farm up, I make it to the Focus Blast, and this is going to knock out unless the opponent commits the final shield. Opponent is going to let that through. Back in comes Berserker. Berserker firing off energy, and I'm just going to let this go. Even if they have Iron Head, they still should just be winning for me to send in the Wheezing. Wheezing is going to be firing off the Brutal Swing. Objectively, this is a mistake. I should just go for the double Overheat. At this point, my opponent, I found out after the fact that they actually did not have Iron Head, and at this point, they just recognized that it's over, and they ended up closing their app. So we do get a farm down there. All right, we move into the next match. We lead Registeel into Mawile. It's Fire Fang, so I save switch into FLYGON. And well, we have found one of the things that is actually able to wall FLYGON in this cup, and that is Togetic. Togetic is an absolute wall. I would need Stone Edge here if I wanted to hit this, but unfortunately, I'm not running it. I am running the standard moveset of Dragon Claw and Scorching Sands because that coverage is just amazing into just about everything that isn't, let's say, like a Whimsicott or a Togetic. They're going to be firing off energy here. Dazzling Gleam will connect. I'm going to try and go for a Zap Cannon and go for an Undercharge, hoping that it is going to give me farm, but Togetic not as bulky as I remembered, so the Undercharge ends up not being enough, and I get the KO. We're going to see Mawile firing off the Power-Up Punch. I know that I can tank a Power-Up Punch, so I am going to no shield and make it to the Zap Cannon. Zap Cannon should force a shield from the Mawile, and then it's all up to the Wheezing in the back. Wheezing farming up quite a lot of energy here. Opponent is going to fire off a move. In case they have Iron Head, I'm going to shield up. It is actually going to be the Play Rough that they're running. I wait a turn to make sure they don't catch, and I'm going for the Overheat. Overheat is going to be no shielded. What do they have in the back? They have Arctibax in the back, and unfortunately, barring a catch, this game just looks over. I fire off this Brutal Swing, but it's a debuff Brutal Swing that does absolutely nothing. They're firing off an Icy Wind. My attack was already lowered by 2 stages. Now it's lowered by a 3rd stage. I farm up. I have to hope that Registeel can make it to a move, but I definitely cannot. And that's going to be game over for me here. The opponent actually was pretty well prepared for FLYGON, and it pays off for them in a big way as they're able to take that win. Hopping into the final match, picking up a very positive lead, Registeel versus Altaria. Opponent save switches into their own Registeel, and I decide I can stay in here. Since they switch, they're going to be 1 lock-on behind in this matchup, so I am going to fire off the Focus Blast and grab a shield. I farm up with my Regi, go for the catch, onto the Wheezing. Did I finally catch a Focus Blast? No, it's another Zap Cannon. At some point, I just have to give up on the dream of catching a Focus Blast onto the Wheezing, but man, it would do such little damage. I end up shielding here as they go for their own Focus Blast now, so that's a bit unfortunate. As a Focus Blast, I could live from that range, but when it's a difference of 1 lock-on, sometimes you think, you know what, I may as well shield it just to be safe. Firing off this Overheat, Overheat is debuffed, so it's not going to do a ton of damage. Opponent knows I don't have Play Rough. They try and get a snipe with Dragon Breath, but the Switch Clock comes up just in time. I'm able to save that Overheat for later, which is massive. They go for the Sky Attack. I can tank that. That's not going to be an issue. I will need 2 charge attacks to knock out the Altaria, however. I'm firing off charge attack number 1. The Zap Cannon connects. We do not see the debuff. Altaria continuing to farm. I'm going to let this through. My Switch Clock should hopefully be up fairly soon after I'm able to pick up the knockout onto the Altaria. And then when they sit in their Reggie, I'm going to try and go for a combo play with the Overheat. So this is going to pick up the knockout here. The Switch Clock, not quite up yet. I send in the Wheezing, but they anticipate the play. What a read by my opponent. I lose the move, and now I just send in the FLYGON. FLYGON is going to go for the Scorching Sands to pick up the knockout here, and that is so unfortunate. What do they have in the back here? No, it's Skarmory. That Overheat would have been so useful into their entire team, but now my energy is pretty much walled here. It's single resisted. I do get an attack debuff, which does help quite a bit. My opponent is just going to be going for double Sky Attack here, but they're not quite there yet. I'm going to fire off the Scorching Sands. I'm going to need a catch to win this game. This Scorching Sands will connect. I get another debuff. I continue to farm, and there's the catch onto the Registeel. We get it. So despite that huge mistake in the mid game, opponent will go for the undercharge there to get what energy they can. Despite the huge mistake in the mid game, FLYGON is able to secure it as Scorching Sands number 3 KOs the Skarmory, and that is a good game. All in all, FLYGON is a high-risk, high-reward type Pokemon. It's very glassy, but the damage output that it has is absolutely amazing, and Scorching Sands is really nice compared to Earth Power. Scorching Sands does improve the pacing slightly, and the ability to get attack drops as well has really good synergy with a Pokemon that is very glassy, and Mudshot Dragonclaw being able to get there in 8 turns, this thing is lightning fast when it comes to energy generation, and in this Great League Fantasy Cup, it should be able to put in a massive amount of work. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.